Hashtag single dad knocked at 4 a.m., boss after a bad date, stepped in and said, "You're the one I want." That desperate knock at 4 a.m. changed everything. With a sleeping child in his arms and panic in his eyes, James never imagined his boss would open that door and see him at his lowest, or that those 5 words would rewrite their story forever. If you've ever believed that love finds us when we least expect it, hit that like button and subscribe for more heart-touching stories that remind us why life's unplanned moments often bring the greatest joy. The pounding in Melissa's head matched the pounding at her door. 3 glasses of wine and 1 horrific date later, all she wanted was sleep. Not another man demanding her attention, especially not at 4 a.m. She peered through the peephole, expecting to see her persistent date who couldn't take rejection gracefully. Instead, she found James, her talented but reserved marketing director, looking utterly defeated with his 7-year-old daughter Emma limp in his arms. "James?" Melissa swung the door open, instantly alert despite the lingering effects of the wine. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "The hospital called about my mom, she's had a stroke. Emma's running a fever, and I didn't know where else to go. I remembered you lived closest to the hospital, and I just—" "Get in here," she said, stepping aside. "Put her in my bedroom." As James gently laid his daughter on Melissa's bed, she noticed his hands trembling. Melissa placed a cool washcloth on Emma's forehead while James explained the whole situation in fragmented sentences. His mother was his only reliable childcare. His ex-wife had moved across the country with her new husband. He was completely alone in this. "Go," Melissa said firmly. "I'll watch Emma. Your mother needs you." James hesitated, his eyes darting between his daughter and the door. "Melissa, this isn't in your job description. You're my boss, not my—" "Right now I'm just someone who cares," she interrupted. "Go to your mom. Emma and I will be fine." When the door closed behind him, Melissa sat at the edge of the bed, studying Emma's flushed face. This wasn't how she'd planned to spend her night after escaping a date with Marcus, a self-absorbed investment banker who'd spent 2 hours talking about his yacht. Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Where's Daddy?" "He had to see Grandma," Melissa explained softly. "I'm Melissa. I work with your dad." "The lady from the picture," Emma mumbled before drifting back to sleep. Melissa frowned. "Picture? What picture?" 3 months earlier, James had accepted the marketing director position at Melissa's tech startup with reluctance. The pay was excellent, but the demands of a growing company would stretch his already impossible schedule as a single father. "I need to be honest," he'd told her during the final interview. "My daughter comes first. Always." Melissa had smiled, remembering her own father's absence during her childhood. "I wouldn't want it any other way. We can make this work." And they had. James proved himself invaluable, often working remotely after Emma's bedtime. Melissa adjusted meeting schedules around school pickups and the occasional sick day. Their professional relationship flourished, built on mutual respect and understanding. But Melissa never crossed the line into personal territory. Professional boundaries mattered, especially as CEO. She'd learned that lesson the hard way with her last workplace relationship, a disaster that had ended with her leaving her previous company. Meanwhile, James kept his personal life private. His colleagues knew only the basics: widower at 26, remarried at 28, divorced at 31. Now 34, he focused entirely on work and Emma. Dating wasn't even on his radar. When James returned from the hospital at dawn, he found Melissa and Emma at the kitchen table coloring. Emma's fever had broken, and she was chattering excitedly about Melissa's collection of art books. "Daddy! Melissa has been to Paris. She showed me pictures of the Eiffel Tower." James's exhausted face softened as he took in the scene. "Has she been bothering you?" "Not at all," Melissa said, sliding a cup of coffee toward him. "How's your mom?" "Stable. They caught it early. He collapsed into a chair. I can't thank you enough. That's what friends do, Melissa said, surprising herself with the word. Were they friends? They'd never spoken outside of work before tonight. Emma tugged on James's sleeve. Can Melissa come for pancakes sometime? She said she's never had your special pancakes. James glanced at Melissa, then back to his daughter. I'm sure Melissa is too busy for pancakes, sweetheart. Actually, Melissa heard herself saying, pancakes sound wonderful. But only if it's not an imposition. The smile that broke across James's face made something flutter in Melissa's chest, something she immediately tried to suppress. He was her employee. This was just professional kindness. One pancake breakfast turned into a Saturday morning tradition. Emma adored Melissa, and Melissa found herself looking forward to those casual mornings more than her usual weekend plans. James seemed to relax around her, his quiet humor emerging as they bonded over their shared love of obscure movies and hiking trails. At work, they maintained their professional relationship, though Melissa caught herself lingering in his office doorway more often, finding excuses to collaborate directly rather than through emails. You seem different lately, observed Melissa's friend Kara over lunch. Happier. It's the company. We're finally turning a profit. No, it's something else. Kara studied her face. You're glowing. Are you seeing someone? Don't be ridiculous, Melissa scoffed. I'm just getting more sleep. But that night, staring at her ceiling, Melissa admitted to herself what she'd been denying for weeks. She had feelings for James, feelings that complicated everything. He was her employee. He had a child. He probably still had feelings for his ex-wife. And most importantly, he saw her as nothing more than a kind boss who'd helped in a crisis. Meanwhile, James sat in his own apartment, looking at a photo on his phone, a candid shot of Melissa laughing with Emma at the park, both of their faces glowing with happiness. He'd nearly shown it to Emma's therapist, who had asked if Emma had any maternal figures in her life. But he'd stopped himself. Melissa wasn't that to them. She couldn't be. She was his boss, successful and sophisticated. Why would she want his complicated life? You should get back out there, Melissa's mother insisted during their weekly call. You're 36, Melissa. Your biological clock is none of your business, Melissa interrupted. But the conversation nagged at her. When Marcus, a friend of a friend, asked her out, she surprised herself by accepting. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe she needed to date appropriate men, successful, unattached men who didn't work for her. The date was a disaster from the start. Marcus spoke exclusively about himself, interrupted her constantly, and made assumptions about her company that made it clear he hadn't bothered to research what she actually did. I could help you find investors, he said, though she'd mentioned twice that they were already fully funded. By dessert, Melissa was counting the minutes until she could leave. When Marcus leaned across the table and said, "My place is just around the corner," she nearly laughed out loud. "Thank you for dinner," she said instead, "but I don't think we're compatible." Marcus's smile faltered. "Everyone says we're perfect for each other. Two successful people, both attractive. What's the problem?" The problem, Melissa realized, was that she was comparing him to someone else, someone who listened when she spoke, whose laugh made her heart skip, who cared more about his daughter than his career achievements. "There's no problem," she said gently. "We're just looking for different things." Marcus insisted on driving her home, despite her protests. Outside her door, he leaned in for a kiss she didn't want. "I had a lovely time," she lied, stepping back. "Good night, Marcus." "Come on, Melissa. We both know how this night is supposed to end." "Not like that," she said firmly. "Good night." She closed the door on his protests, leaning against it with relief. That's when the knocking had started, first Marcus, persistent and entitled, then later, urgently, James. The morning after the hospital crisis, Melissa expected things to return to normal. James would be embarrassed by his vulnerability, she would pretend not to have seen him at his weakest. They'd go back to being boss and employee who occasionally shared pancakes. Instead, something had shifted. James brought her coffee without asking. Melissa found herself sharing more about her frustrations with investors. The professional wall between them developed tiny, significant cracks. Then came the company retreat, a weekend at a mountain resort with the entire team. Team-building activities filled the days, while evenings were meant for relaxation and casual bonding. Emma stayed with James's mother, who had recovered enough to watch her for short periods. On the second night, Melissa found James alone on the resort's terrace, staring at the stars. "Too much team bonding?" she asked, settling beside him. He smiled. "Just the right amount. I needed some quiet." They sat in comfortable silence until James spoke. "Emma asked me yesterday if you were my girlfriend." Melissa nearly choked on her drink. "What did you tell her?" "That you're my boss. That we're friends." He hesitated. "She said that was too bad, because you make me smile more than anyone else." The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. "Kids say the most unexpected things," Melissa finally said. "They also see things adults miss." James turned to face her. "Melissa, James, don't." She stood abruptly. "You work for me. There are boundaries for a reason." She walked away, heart hammering. What was she doing? This couldn't happen. She'd worked too hard to build her company, her reputation. Office romances were messy. Add a child to the equation, and it became impossibly complicated. James watched her go, cursing himself for crossing a line. Emma was right, Melissa made him happier than he'd been in years. But he'd misread the situation. She'd been kind, nothing more. The awkwardness that followed was excruciating. Their easy rapport vanished, replaced by formal emails and minimal conversation. Saturday pancakes ended without discussion. Emma asked repeatedly when Melissa would visit, and James ran out of excuses. After 3 weeks of this new normal, Melissa received a notification from HR. James had applied for a position at a competing firm. Her heart sank. She'd driven him away with her fear, her professional boundaries. Now she'd lose him entirely. She marched to his office, closing the door behind her. "You're leaving?" James looked up, surprised by her directness. "It seems best for everyone." "Best for who, exactly?" "Not for the company. Not for me." "I thought you'd be relieved," he said quietly. "No more complications." "Is that what I am to you? A complication?" "No," he said, his voice soft but intense. "You're the woman I think about when I should be sleeping. You're the person Emma asks about every day. You're the reason I can't focus on anything else. So yes, I need to leave, because watching you every day and maintaining appropriate boundaries is slowly killing me." Melissa stared at him, speechless. "I'll give proper notice," he continued. "I'll train my replacement. You'll never have to. Don't go." The words escaped before she could stop them. "Melissa. I've been miserable these past weeks," she admitted. "I miss your pancakes. I miss Emma. I miss you." James stood slowly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm scared," she whispered. "Scared of ruining the company dynamics. Scared of hurting Emma if things don't work out. Scared of how much I care about both of you." He took a step closer. "What if we're both overthinking this? What if we just see what happens?" Before she could answer, her assistant knocked urgently. "Melissa, your 3 o'clock is here." "The venture capitalists?" The moment shattered. Duty called. We'll finish this conversation later, she promised. But later never came. Emergency investor calls, a crisis with their largest client, and then James's mother suffered a setback, requiring him to take personal leave. Their timing seemed perpetually wrong. Marcus reappeared unexpectedly, showing up at Melissa's office with flowers. "One more chance," he pleaded. "I was nervous last time. I'm not usually so self-absorbed." Against her better judgment, Melissa agreed to dinner. Maybe this was a sign she needed to move on from her impossible feelings for James. The second date was marginally better than the first. Marcus asked questions about her company, though his eyes glazed over during her answers. He mentioned his yacht only twice. "Come back to my place," he suggested as they left the restaurant. "I promise, just for a nightcap." Melissa hesitated. There was no spark with Marcus, but maybe that would develop. Maybe this was what adult relationships looked like: practical, suitable matches rather than inconvenient attractions to employees with complicated lives. "All right," she agreed. "One drink." At his apartment, Marcus poured generous glasses of whiskey and sat too close on the sofa. His kiss was skillful but mechanical, devoid of the connection she craved. When his hand slid to her thigh, she pulled away. "I should go," she said. "It's getting late." "You just got here," he protested. "I thought we were connecting." "I'm sorry, Marcus. You're very nice, but—" "It's him, isn't it?" Marcus interrupted, his tone shifting from charming to cold. "I saw how you looked at that guy from your office when he brought you those reports yesterday. The single dad with the sob story." Melissa stiffened. "You don't know anything about him." "I know his type. Playing the sympathy card to get ahead. Using his kid to make women feel sorry for him." "You've never even met him," she said, standing. "This conversation is over." "Fine. Go back to your charity case. But don't come crying to me when he uses you to advance his career and then moves on to the next soft-hearted boss." Melissa grabbed her purse and left without another word, anger burning in her chest. The nerve of Marcus to judge James, a man who worked harder than anyone she knew, who never used his personal situation as an excuse, who put his daughter first even when it cost him professionally. By the time she reached her apartment, her anger had transformed into clarity. She'd been hiding behind professional concerns, using boundaries as a shield against her real fear, that she was falling in love with James and his daughter, building hopes for a ready-made family that might reject her. She kicked off her heels and poured herself a glass of water, determined to talk to James first thing tomorrow. No more excuses. No more missed chances. That's when the knocking had started. Back in the present, with Emma's fever broken and James returned from the hospital, Melissa watched father and daughter preparing to leave her apartment as morning light filtered through the windows. "James," she said suddenly, "why did Emma call me the lady from the picture?" His cheeks colored slightly. "Ah, that. I may have a photo of you and Emma from the company picnic as my phone background." "Oh." Something warm bloomed in her chest. "It makes her happy to see it," he added quickly. "She really admires you." "Just her?" Melissa asked softly. James looked at her, vulnerability raw in his expression. "No. Not just her." "Daddy," Emma interrupted, tugging his sleeve. "Can we ask Melissa now?" James hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Emma bounced on her toes. "Will you come to my ballet recital next weekend? I'm a flower. A tulip. The pink kind." "I'd love to," Melissa answered, looking at James. "If that's okay with your dad." "More than okay," he said quietly. "In fact, maybe after the recital, we could have dinner? The three of us? Like a family dinner?" Emma asked innocently. James froze, but Melissa smiled. "Yes, exactly like that." After they left, Melissa leaned against her door, heart full. 3 months ago, she'd hired a marketing director. Today, she was falling in love with a man and his daughter who were slowly becoming her world. The ballet recital was adorably chaotic, with Emma's tulip headpiece tilting precariously throughout her performance. Melissa cheered as loudly as James, feeling a surge of pride that surprised her with its intensity. Dinner afterward was at a child-friendly Italian restaurant, where Emma enthusiastically described every detail of her performance between bites of spaghetti. When Emma went to look at the dessert display, James reached across the table for Melissa's hand. "Thank you," he said. "This means everything to her. To us." "I should be thanking you," Melissa replied. "You two have brought something into my life I didn't know was missing." Later, after Emma had fallen asleep in the car, James walked Melissa to her door. "I've been thinking," he said carefully. "About work. About us." "Me too," she admitted. "It's complicated. It doesn't have to be. I've spoken with the board chair. I can report directly to him instead of you. No conflict of interest." Melissa blinked. "You've thought this through." "I've had plenty of time to think about what I want," he said, stepping closer. "About who I want." The kiss that followed felt like coming home, natural, right, inevitable. When they finally pulled apart, Melissa rested her forehead against his. "You know this won't be easy," she warned. "My schedule is crazy. Emma might resent sharing you." "Emma adores you," he countered. "And I'm pretty good at managing complicated schedules." "What about your ex-wife? What if she decides to come back?" James shook his head. "That chapter closed long ago. I'm ready for a new one. With you, if you want that too." Melissa thought about all the reasons to say no, all the professional complications, the personal risks, the potential for heartbreak. Then she thought about Emma's smile when she saw her at the recital, about James's quiet strength, about pancake Saturdays and the feeling that she'd found her place. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want you. Both of you." 6 months later, Melissa sat on the porch swing of James's house, their house now, since she'd moved in last month. Emma was inside, helping James's mother decorate cookies. James sat beside Melissa, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sunset. "Any regrets?" he asked, kissing her temple. "Just one," she said seriously. "I wish you had knocked on my door at 4 a.m. much sooner." He laughed, pulling her closer. "Better late than never." Inside, Emma appeared at the window, waving enthusiastically. They waved back, sharing a smile that held all their happiness, all their hope. That desperate knock had changed everything. With a sleeping child in his arms and panic in his eyes, James never imagined his boss would open that door and see him at his lowest, or that those 5 words would rewrite their story forever. "You're the one I want." Sometimes, love arrives at the most unexpected moment, in the most unexpected package. Sometimes, it takes a crisis at 4 a.m. to realize that what you've been searching for has been right in front of you all along. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. Remember that love often finds us when we least expect it, sometimes even with a desperate knock at 4 a.m.